All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Happy to welcome famed comic and actor Tom Arnold. Welcome to the news.
Well, it's an honor to be here. You got a good, you look better than me, but who doesn't? But it's an honor to be. You gotta get this thing. Yeah, there's a
It's
little
all
bit.
it's all smoke and mirrors. It's lighting, and I've even got some powder, believe it or not.
That's
So
very good. I do like somewhere out here somewhere. You know, I'm a single dad. My kids are 8 and 10, and they're home today, sick. That everybody got sick at the school or something. So it's a little hectic. I'm not at my normal beautiful self, but I'm excited to do. I'm excited to talk to an adult. I will say that. I haven't talked to many adults lately, and so it's great.
well, since I work in politics, I don't talk to a lot of adults either.
That's
So
very true. Oh my gosh, you!
and
I have a lot of respect for what you do, and you personally, it's a heck of a thing. What's
it
going on?
is. Well, let
Yeah.
me. We have got a lot to cover, and hopefully it'll be free, sort of free flowing and all that. But you have known Donald Trump, I think, for something like 40 years.
Yeah. That's
And
for
I met him. I've only met him once, but the time I met him, super friendly, super charming, super flattering.
yeah.
What was he like when you've met him, when you've known him for years in real life?
Well, the same way. You know, he has a way of he come on my sports show, and before we started filming, you go, I just want to say I'm here for Tom Arnold. I am here, and it makes you feel good. You feel like a king, you know. And I went to. He's like, do you want to go to the Playboy Mansion with me after the show? I have a new vodka or new whatever tequila. I go, yeah, I'll do that with you. I'll go over there and we'll go. And he goes, I want you to meet my new girlfriend. I go, okay, we'll go, and we go. And his new girlfriend is there. Kara McDougal was her name. She had a Playmate outfit, like she's maybe Playmate of the Year or something. Very nice, very cute. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, and Melania's here, and Ivanka. They're all, and they pose together." And I did a sports show with athletes, and athletes have some complicated relationships. But I was like, "Wow, that guy, man, he just doesn't care." And I think that's the thing that at the end of the '80s, I did my ex-wife and I did an HBO special at one of his casinos, Castle or the Trump something, and he said, "Hey," he called me. He said, "Listen, I got a $3 billion Bugatti. I forget what it's called, Duesenberg or some kind of car, $3 billion. And what I'll do is, if you like it, I'll drive it up on stage and be Roseanne's chauffeur, and it'll look very cool." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds like fun. That'll be cool." And then about 2 months after we shot the special, HBO called me and said, "Hey, this old farmer that boxed this thing up in southern New Jersey and hauled it up to the casino for Donald Trump, he never got paid. He never got
Hmm.
paid." He's a, and I thought, that's hilarious. That's okay. We'll pay it. That's a hilarious Donald Trump story. But as he transitions into politics, I mean, it was people that know him are like, "Oh, this is a terrible idea." He's fine doing that other thing and stuff, but this is going to be a terrible idea. And I think it's proven that it's a terrible idea. But I have to say about him, he's never changed. Like, he's authentic, not authentically the worst person in the world. But it's the people around him that change, the people that his enablers, and that's the real thing. He's himself, and he'll be more and more and more and more himself. Because he gets away with it. So they're like, "Well, we'll cover for that." But
I mean, it sounds like he would be a good friend to have or sort of colleague if you were just going to see him occasionally and you didn't work for him or something. But
yeah,
obviously, being president is a totally different deal.
it is. And he's a guy. If you see him once in a while, he's one of those characters. Especially in my business, we know people who are characters, and we enjoy that. The one thing I'm grateful for is I never did the Celebrity Apprentice. He would call me up a lot and do it, and I'll tell you how convincing he is. First of all, I didn't see what the end game of that. Then, are you Donald Trump's apprentice? And I have to say, they were offering a lot of money, and I needed it, but I couldn't see how if I won this thing, then what would be the thing? And him and Mark Burnett called one time, the last time they called, and I was on the phone, and I talk, and then I hang up the phone to my ex-wife, fourth ex-wife. I said, "Why did you say yes?" I go, "I didn't say yes." She goes, "No, no. The last thing you said to Donald Trump was, 'I'll see you in New York.'" I go, "Oh my gosh, I did." He talked. Okay, well, I have to get I have to get out of this. He does a thing where you kind of feel sorry for him too, and people. It's always surprising when people feel sorry for like a billionaire, but he has this way of making you feel sorry, also making you feel like the best. I remember when he was calling Rosie O'Donnell, who's a friend of mine, fat and disgusting, and I said to Roseanne Barr, who was my ex-wife, "Well, what? You got to defend Rosie because she's one of us." And he said, Roseanne said, "Well, he's never called me fat and disgusting," which is that weird thing where you're like, okay, I'm the one guy or the one woman that he doesn't treat horribly, so that should be enough for me. And and by the way, he had called her fat and disgusting. There's a picture of Donald Trump and I. We went to the Elton John AIDS Oscar party, and we sat together. Melania, him, and my maybe third wife or something. And he leaned over, and you could see him saying it. He said, "Boy, you dodged a bullet with Roseanne. Yeah, she's disgusting." And I remember thinking, I don't want to hear that from somebody. It's weird to someone badmouths your ex or something, especially that, because he's like, "Oh, your wife now is very attractive." But it's weird when someone badmouths your ex because even if you had an acrimonious breakup, you still are inclined to defend them. And my version of defending people would be like, "Roseanne was disgusting. You're lucky to be out of there." And I go, "Oh no, have you seen me? I was also disgusting." No, take yourself down. It does good.
Oh wow. So I mean, from my standpoint, right, as a center right journalist columnist,
Yeah.
it's possible that I would be better off, that my career would have been better off if I had just gone along with the Trump bandwagon. I mean, I couldn't do it. Do you ever think that like you could be Secretary of State right now if you had like gone along with Trump running for president?
Well, I think that especially at first when he said he was running, and I was like, "Oh my God, this bad news." And I called my buddies from my sports show, the Best Damn Sports Show, period, on Fox Sports. My clip producer brother was the executive producer of The Apprentice, and we shared. You know how people share stuff about the stars of their. It's kind of a tradition in Hollywood. Share these embarrassing things or moments where people freak out. I know Bill O'Reilly had some great freakouts on Inside Edition or whatever his show was.
We'll do it live.
Yeah, the crew. I certainly have very embarrassing things of me too, but I would see these things and they were just horribly disgusting. And so I called the other brother. I said, you gotta put those out there, man. That tape, because they put together a compilation for like a Christmas thing. I said, you got to put that out there. And he's like, well, I'm afraid of the Trump people. And he goes, he won't get elected. He won't. I go, no, you got to do something. There's races. There's him pointing at the camera woman. You're effable. I mean, he did that like that was his thing on wherever she went. And so I thought, well, that might open some eyes a little bit. But then they were afraid. And then Mark Burnett signed him and his brother to a $10 million deal. So they did it. And Mark Burnett, I have to say, I was friendly with him too. And, I was reaching out to him. You got to release this stuff, buddy. In 2011, when Trump started the birther stuff, I mean, I have the emails. I wrote Mark Burnett to NBC like, this is unacceptable, man. I said, if someone demanded the birth certificate to the first Jewish president, I'm Jewish, they would never be on TV again. I'm just telling you right now. That would be it. It's unacceptable. And so that was the last time I said, I don't want him calling me. I don't want, this is just horrible. So later, Christmas 2016, Trump just got elected. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's a center-right Republican like yourself, a good friend of mine, had his Christmas party, which he always does. And Mark Burnett was there. And I went up to him and I said, hey, man, you got to get those tapes out there. And he said, you know what, Tom, I'm not giving them to Trump. He wants them. And I'm not giving them to you. And besides, and he held up his phone. It's his kid was Trump's ring bearer. He goes, this. He goes, by the way, he's going to be presidential. You'll see it. Of course, he's not. And I end up in a big argument with those guys, and I end up leaving the party, my buddy's party, and I get to the valet there at Arnold's, and there'd been an accident down. Arnold is in a big thing, and there was an accident down, so it was taking the cars a while to get there, and I wanted to get out of there because people seemed to be very mad at me. And behind me, Clint Eastwood walked up, and he's very conservative, and he's like, Trump's a bonehead. He said, the thing about being running for mayor, when you get elected, then you have to be mayor. And I always thought, well, that's pretty insightful from that guy. And what do you do?
Do you have any right now? The big conversation. Well, there's a lot of big conversations. One of the conversations is about Joe Biden's age, and he does seem like he's lost a step.
Yeah.
Some people think maybe he should step aside and let Gretchen Whitmer and Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom fight it out. Other people say it's too late. Just kind of ride it out with Biden. Where do you fall on that?
Too late, but and he is older. He is. I mean, that happens to all of us. There's good things and there's bad things. But we have to remember that in 2020, Biden and Kamala Harris were the only two people, the only combination of people that could beat Trump. It was, Biden was going along and he wasn't doing great. And then, but that combination of those two people, I don't think any other combination of people would have beaten Trump. And to me, that saved the country. And, my thinking was, okay, now we don't hear about Trump anymore. But no, that doesn't happen. But I believe that too. And I think Biden is a guy that, first of all, he's not a monster. So, when you're weighing these guys, they're both old guys. They both forget stuff. They go, but he's a real decent human being. There's no, they try to make, because their whole goal on Trump people is like, we got to make Biden as bad as Trump. And it's just not going to, so we don't have to talk about Trump. It's just not going to happen. Even with his son, who, I'm familiar, I've been in recovery. I'm familiar. I've had some bad behavior in my time. And his son, and by the way, all these kids of successful people in my business or wherever, that's just like, they take advantage of that. But he was a very bad drug addict, did a lot of very bad drug addict things. And I think that the right thought, well, we'll get him. He should dump his son. He should. And if there's one thing about Joe Biden, he does not quit on people. I mean, his dog, his German Shepherd, bit 35 Secret Service agents before
Yes.
he sent it back to Delaware. It was still like when he lost it.
I mean, I don't want to laugh at this. I don't want to laugh about the Secret Service agents getting bitten.
Yeah.
But your point is well taken about loyalty and what it would take for him to give up his son, especially since we know what the Biden family has been through, many years ago.
Yeah, that's something. People forget about that, and everybody. I mean, knock on wood. The worst thing is to lose a child, to lose, his wife died. I mean, all that, and then the other child died. The Bo, and that weighs on a person. I think there's probably some thinking like, we'll get Hunter in this trial. That will take Joe out because how can he focus when he's had such issues? I don't know how he made it the first when he was in Congress and that horrible accident took it. I mean, I think that'd be the end for most people in general. Like that changes you. You might rise above it. People do, but man, you can't forget about those things and make it of who he is. I mean, he genuinely is a nice guy. Though. There's no, and he means well, and he's not up to a bunch of nonsense. He does mix up his words as president. Who doesn't? Who doesn't? But I think that when you look at the two, it's clear. In the future, it would be good to have Gavin run for president, younger people, but that's not what's happening right now. So it's going to be.
Is there a Democrat out there somewhere that you particularly like? Or
like
a Republican for that matter?
I like Gavin Newsom. Known him a long time and supported him when he went for lieutenant governor or governor. And I spent some good time with him, and I really like him. But I think some of these others you mentioned, Gretchen, but there's a few that are excellent too. Um, and there's Republicans. See, I grew up in Iowa, so my dad's a Republican. Everybody, the older generation, but I guess you'd call them center-right Republicans. That's how we were. And in high school, the debate coach, he divided us up. Okay, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the state capitol and pass a bill. Like that was part of our education. We go up to state capitol in Iowa, and we sit there. We learn, how to compromise and deal with each other, and but that's out the window. Although high school kids should be, they should let smart high school kids run everything now because they at least have an idea they got to make this work. And we had some great governors, the great Republican governors. Robert Ray, loved him, and Terry Branstad was good at first, and but things, it's a different world. I think it might. I think hopefully people will get tired of they want to get stuff done. And maybe this is going to be like popping the boil this next election. I hope so. I will say Gavin Newsom said something 4 years ago on Axios interview. I think 4 years ago, 3 or 4. He said the Republican Party is going to follow Trump off a cliff. It's not going to stop. He was like, Trump is going to come back. He said, I'm telling you. And everybody's lining up behind him, and they're all going to go off a cliff together, which
seems to be pretty prescient. They're definitely going to follow him wherever he goes, and if it is off a cliff, they will follow. So, coming from Iowa, this is Middle America. This is like meat packing plants. This is, this is the real America that Sarah Palin, might talk about. And a lot of Iowans used to be, kind of populist, blue-collar Democrat voters. Now they're Trump voters by and large. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about like that transformation. I mean, just to let you know where I'm from a little place called Wolfsville, Maryland. My dad was a prison guard for 30 years in Hagerstown, Maryland. So that's kind of, I grew up like in a blue-collar Reagan kind of Republican area. But what is your take on how the Trump voter has sort of changed from the folks that you and I grew up with?
Well, I did at Tumble, Iowa. I worked at the meatpacking plant for 3 years out of high school on the kill floor. People are like, how do I get a job I don't get fired from? I go, get the crappiest job you can, because they have a hard time firing people from the kill floor of the meatpacking plant. My grandpa worked there 50 years. My dad worked there. My uncle, very blue-collar town. Wapello County, Iowa. Maria Shriver told me when she went there in 1980 to campaign for her Uncle Ted, it was the most Democratic county in America. They had voted against Abraham Lincoln, this of the Democratic Party with union people, this, that. And obviously, Democrats, we lost I don't know if we took it for granted, but, a lot of things happened in the 80s with our economy, the packing plants closed down, this, that. And I think people they feel they feel like they're not being paid attention to. And I think that's what happened. I think with Trump, I saw it at the Iowa State Fair. And I believe this is true. I think every generation or so, there's a group of white people. And someone comes along and says, I'm talking to you. I am speaking your language. I am representing you. And what ends up happening is that the person, it's historically, it's happened a lot, especially so, they end up going, and then that group of white people does not move up a notch. While people of color, they're always moving up a notch. And so this base of white people is in the same spot because they got, he's talking to us. We're the victims here. And it's unfortunate. And, Trump comes in there and he's like this TV star. We all love show business, And even though The Apprentice is so funny because it almost got canceled once because not enough people were watching. Like it was, but he comes in there. They're like, look at him. He's rich. And I know this are growing up with not much money. The rich people in our town, we held them in high esteem, man.
Yeah.
better
Same
than us.
sort of thing. It's like almost a reverence. They know something we don't know, and we don't resent them or hate them. It's
No,
like we admire them.
absolutely. They were, we just knew they're better than us. That's it, you know. And I do know that feeling. And so you get a bunch of working class people that, I mean, I don't, when I see the crowds, you know, it does look very familiar with how I grew up in Iowa. There's people, and even now when Trump goes back to Ottumwa, where I'm from, last time he went back there fairly recently, um, he spoke on the stage that was the Tom Arnold stage. Our family helped build a big entertainment center there. I had some successful people like that, and he was on the stage. I'm like, damn, he is on my stage, man. But he's. I think part of people think him as a show. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
show. We got a show going, and then there's the people that are just he. There's nobody. I don't care how bad you are or the horrible things you've done. Well, if you support him, he won't. He's not going to criticize you. He doesn't. If you're David Duke or if you're any, you know, he'll say they're big fans of me, Trump. So I'm not going to say anything like that. That's a character flaw right there. Because I can remember George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, at the Republican convention saying, "Hey, get racists out." This like straight up. And there's always pressure to keep your tent very big. And there has been times where with Reagan and him and where they're like, no, 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 this is, and even George W. with the border people, the migrants, it was like, let's show some humanity. And it takes courage to go, okay, I don't want these truly bad Proud Boys, whatever. They do go, okay, he's our guy. And so it's a weird thing in politics where someone will say, here's what's more important: it's the country and this, but he's just unable. That's his personality, though. He is constitutionally unable of being honest or B thinking about anybody but himself. And so this is what you get.
You mentioned the entertainment quality, which I think is underrated probably in terms of his appeal. And you're somebody who's been at the highest echelons of acting and comedy. When you look at Trump, do you see someone? Is it talent? Is it gut instinct? But could you analyze him from sort of an entertainer standpoint?
Well, I mean, he does have a talent, a showman's talent, because he seems to be, and also with his base or whatever, he's definitely connected to that. I think that people overlook a lot of the things that he says and does that are not talented, that are, you know, um, he does have obviously he has something to be in the position that he's in. He's a reality star in Hollywood. People are like, that's not that's not even like reality stars are. I will say when Arnold ran, at first I was nervous, but I spent a lot of time with him up in Sacramento. It was very fun. And the thing about him is, and I said before he ran governor, I said my wife at the time was a lobbyist, and her father, Mike Bruce, a big lobbyist, and had been in the Senate out here. And there's a guy named John Burton, who was this very liberal, but the head of the Democrat Party. Great character, filthy mouth. I loved him, and I said, you got to get it with John Burton. That he needs to be your friend, and then you guys can work stuff out. And he did. He made a point, and then they got to know each other. They got some stuff done, and also with Arnold, it was always about how his ethics are just excellent about flying his plane up there or whatever, living in a hotel. Like he was always above board. Like he was aware that there's a public trust, and we got to be extra aware of that. And don't cut any corners. We don't want to cost anybody money. The state will do our thing. We'll do our best. But it was a different world. And Arnold's funny because he was saying, Tom, your videos, you're so crazy. You need to not focus on Trump. Focus on gerrymandering, he would say. And then about a month later, I see him do a video that's just as crazy as mine about Trump. And I think he just snapped. I think it became too much.
Oh wow, where to go? Let me ask you about were you just naturally funny? I know you come from a not only a very blue collar background, but some difficulties in childhood. Is that where it comes from? Did you work on writing? Was it just off the cuff? How did you get to be funny?
Well, I don't know if you know, but there's a documentary series about my little sister called The Queen of Meth, and she was the biggest drug dealer in America. And people, biker, and people are like, "Was it embarrassing that your little sister was a drug dealer?" And I'm like, "Not when I was doing drugs. It wasn't embarrassing. It was kind of handy." But we grew up in an interesting place. We had a single dad, much like me, and our dad worked at a factory and came home, and he was a great dad, but he didn't have a ton of time to play with us. We were very small. When he was 22, I was 4, my sister was 3, my brother was 1. Now I think about that, it gives me shivers, for anything I question him about, Uh, uh, but we when he there's Bob Hope was a very funny, famous comedian. This is in the '60s, and Bob Hope would go to Vietnam or Korea and do shows for the troops, and he'd have pretty women with him, like very extra pretty, and they'd make double entendres. And my dad loved Bob Hope. In fact, that was the only we would hear our dad laughing downstairs. That's the only time we ever heard him laughing like that. And I remember saying to my brother and sister, "Whatever that Bob Hope does, I want to do that." And when I moved to Hollywood, one of the first things I did was a Bob Hope special. And me and Bob, I don't know if we were Robin Hood and the Mary, whatever. We had tights on, I will say that. And Bob Hope called my dad, and Bob Hope signed all this stuff. My dad. I ended up doing some USO stuff with Bob Hope because of his. So my dad at home in Ottumwa, Iowa, in the same room, he used to watch Bob Hope when I was a little kid. Watched me and Bob Hope together on the TV, and that's a magic that makes you think anything is possible. And then I was like, okay, I've done it all. What do I do now? But I also felt if I could be a stand-up comedian, if I could get on TV one time, everyone in my hometown would like me. And it turns out that's not true.
No, it's not true. Same thing if you could become a conservative political columnist. Um,
Right,
A
right.
very wise man once said, "A prophet is not accepted in his own hometown."
Oh, yeah, that's very true. That is very true. Well, I'll tell you, in my third year at the meat packing plant, my goal was to save money so I'd go to the University of Iowa because they had a writers program up there. They had an open mic night at the student union. I thought, I can get up there, man. I get on that stage. I'll be famous in 6 weeks. That's how crazy it was. But my third year at the meat packing plant, I looked around. It was a good job. Had benefits, and I was always trying to figure out how people stayed here and were happy. And I realized they have families. Their family. A lot of the people I worked with were also farmers. They had 2 jobs, but I was like, I need to accept that this is it. This is it, and I need to make this work. And I went out that weekend with my buddies in Tumwa. We had Jailhouse as our new disco, which got ruined when my parents came and their friends and line danced. It was very cool until we witnessed that. Uh, I walked out of there, and Andy Kaufman was standing on the street in Tumwa, Iowa. And people were gathered around him. Like, Andy Kaufman from Taxi, that great comedian. And what happened, we had a women's wrestling event at our Coliseum, which has the Tom Arnold stage now. And he'd gone to it. He was over in Fairfield at the Maharishi International University learning transcendental meditation. And he came and he paid the women wrestlers extra money to stay and wrestle him afterwards. He was doing a thing where he was wrestling women and traveling around.
Hmm.
And then he took everybody uh, in school buses to Happy Joe's Pizza. And I heard that. I'm like, that's what I want to be that guy, the guy that can take everybody. And I went and talked to him a little bit. And just to, how'd you get here? I could tell he was getting a little bit because people were gathered around, but it told me I couldn't figure out how you get from Ottumwa, Iowa to Hollywood. Like, is that even possible? But then I saw that a guy from Hollywood was standing there at Ottumwa, Iowa. So I'm like, it is possible. So that was helpful. And the next year I went to the University of Iowa and did not become famous for a while.
So on Thursday, this coming Thursday, if he had lived, Chris Farley would turn 60 years old. And I saw recently some advice that you had given him, which I thought was pretty pithy. And it was, I'll probably butcher it, but it was you can't be fat and on drugs.
No, you have to make a choice. Yeah.
And I wanted to see if you could talk about why that is.
Well, I met Chris on Saturday Night Live. He did an impression of me, which was very funny, and I think Victoria Jackson did Roseanne. It was just very funny. We got out to host, and Laura Michael said, "You should spend time with Chris. I think you have things in common." He knew I was in recovery, and we did have a lot in common. He's from Wisconsin, and but I love the guy. Very, very, extremely talented. My little children, when they see him on TV doing whatever, they're mesmerized by this guy. We got to know each other. I helped him, as best I could, and we spent a lot of time together. And I had him come out to LA and be on my show or do something, so I keep my eyes on him. And he really tried everything. And I did say to him, this is from my experience, you can't be on drugs and super fat at the same time. And I'll tell you, that was a little issue for him because you could be sober, clean and sober, right now, right today, right. And I'm going to start building another day. But right now, I'm clean and sober. That's a good feeling. But you look in the mirror and you're 300 pounds. You're like, oh, how do I one day at a time that? Now you can, but if you're in a vulnerable situation,
Is it because you're trying to fight two battles at the same time, and they're both really hard battles?
They are, and they're both kind of the same battle. It's just that one you could get some self-esteem by going, okay, today it's working, I'm staying sober. The other one, when you look at it, the other one's the same, and you should go, I've eaten healthy today, I've done this or that. But you go, oh my gosh, how do I get to the end of this thing? How do I make myself look, however it is? And the less amount of battles you can face, the better. That's why I tell people, get sober. We'll see what your mental health issues are, because a lot of us have mental health issues, but you have no idea until you get sober, clean and sober. You can't, it's figure out who you are. You got to clean and sober, and then that will deal with the rest of the stuff, which we can deal with. But if you're, in haze, you're never really, and you're also never really sure if it's drugs or it's this or that. And even in living an honest life, if the goal is not just to not do drugs and drink, but it's to live an honest life, and it's to be honest in all your affairs. And if you're not doing that, if you're sneaking around, and it could be having affairs, something inappropriate, whatever, then you're not honest. And the universe that knows, and you feel that, and so you're never quite taking care of yourself, because there's just always this other thing. And to me, that's a voice in our head, which I have. It's not as loud today, that wants to kill us. And that voice will convince you, oh, no, it's okay to do this one thing one more time. Chris went to 17 rehabs, and he was going to his 18th, and he doing one of those blowouts with drugs and the sex worker and whatever. He's like, I'll make it. I'll get into rehab tomorrow. And that just doesn't happen sometimes, I've started many diets where I'm like, Sunday night, here's what I'm going to eat it all. But with drugs and it can be, especially nowadays with the fentanyl stuff, it can
Oh
be.
yeah.
And the sex worker that was with him told his brother and I that the last thing he said was he clicked his heels and said, this is going to be great. And then flipped over backwards, and she thought he was passed out. So she left, and he was dead. So terribly sad. I think about it all the time, and his best man at my wedding, he was funny, best man. But I will say his family got sober. So there's
That's good.
there's a good there's some happy endings, and but yeah, it's terribly sad.
So I wanted to ask you also about John Goodman, who was the husband on the TV show Roseanne. He went on to be in Raising Arizona, The Big Lebowski, Argo. He's had a really good, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot. He's had a really good acting career. Um, there's a lot of people who their career consists of just being a wife or a husband on
Yeah,
TV and never heard on a sitcom.
yeah.
Did you kind of know that John Goodman had like staying power when you saw him back in the 80s?
when I met Roseanne in 1983, I was 23. She was maybe 30. She was a comedian. We were comedians from the Midwest before she got famous, and she was so funny. She just I never seen a comedian like her. She was super liberal. I come from the meatpacking plant, and she talked a lot about feminism and this and that, the patriarchy, words I didn't even know what they meant. I was like, I'm very interested in this.
Yeah. She had, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Roseanne had the first lesbian kiss on TV,
Absolutely, it
for
did.
example.
Absolutely, and we fought for that. The network's like, can you shoot two versions? I go, this is it, or don't. So yeah, it was always about that kind of stuff, and she liked me because I'm a big guy for a meatpacking plant who would defend her. So but after a couple of years, said, "Would you start? My character on stage, right? Start writing jokes for me." And I did. And I remember 1985, she went on Johnny Carson the first time, and she did a couple of the jokes. I was back in the Midwest, my friends that I'd written, and I remember that feeling like that feels very good, So when it came time for a TV show, she's like, "I want you to come out and write the show, but I also want you to be my husband on the show." She says, and I played her husband on a HBO special, you know. But I was like, I don't know. This seems like a big, I don't think I could. So we went in and met the producers, and I read a little bit. It wasn't good. I wasn't ready. And then John Goodman comes in, who is just an excellent actor all the way around. Stage experience, this, that, and much like Laurie Metcalf. Laurie Metcalf is the most brilliant actor in America. Like I would go to Steppenwolf Theater and watch her and Gary Sinise and all these people. Like she is crazy good. And I think with Roseanne not having a lot of acting experience, you get these really excellent actors around you, and then they feed off your comic energy. And it was just a home run for the game. And then I'm like, I'm not going to be your husband. All right, the show, because that's really what I wanted to do. And then the second year of the show, the 1989, she's like, people know we're a couple. Why don't you be on the show? And so I went on the show. I was so nervous, and played 1989, and 50 million people watched that. That's back in the day when people
Yeah.
were watching it. I played John's Goodman's friend, Arnie, which was a fun character. And then actually my wife, Sandra Bernhardt's character, Nancy, uh, uh, she became a lesbian or whatever. Just for,
Oh, I'd forgotten that was your wife on the show.
she's the best. She's the best. So yeah, a lot of things. I can't believe people were nervous about that kiss. That things have changed so much. They were freaking out about it. But the guys, I see the guys that wrote that, and they're doing very well. But I'm like, I'm not. If you don't want to air that, that's up to you. But I'm not doing it. You're not getting another version of the show. And we called their bluff, and they aired it. And I'm sure they're glad they did. Bob Iger and those guys. I'm sure they're glad looking back on it.
And it's interesting that so many of the people who were involved in Roseanne went on to do Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah. Well, Chuck Lorre was the guy we brought in as a writer, and a head writer. And I have to say this, and this happens with every show. After a couple of years as head writer, we kind of wanted to refresh things, and I had to give Chuck Lorre the bad news that he was not coming back to the show. And then he went on to do all these other things. He's never forgiven me.
2.5 Men and
yeah. Huge favorite. I told him that. I'm doing you a huge pleasure. You're gonna have a huge career if you leave here. This is nothing personal. The last guy worked 2 years. This is a keeper fresh, and you're gonna have a killer career, which he has. He's succeeded far beyond anybody's, And Johnny Galecki, who Roseanne and I discovered him to play her son in a movie. We did a football movie, believe me, that seems insane. And he was the son. He was so good. I said, we gotta bring him on the show. Be on the show to hook up with Sarah Gilbert character, and they became friends. And there is overlaps to all these people. A lot of the writers from Roseanne. We had an excellent roster of writers. I would bring my friends, half of the staff, my friends from the Midwest who were comedians who had good points of view, who were funny, and I'd teach them how to write the form of writing a script. And then we had the other executive producer, Jay Daniel, would bring older time Hollywood guys. And I think the combination of all these people proved to be very, very good.
You had some good success, certainly. I have to ask. Well, obviously, the obvious question is like, what happened to Roseanne? Because as you noted, like, okay, I remember my parents being like, uh, "You shouldn't watch this Roseanne show. That's the Hollywood liberal media trying to, inculcate you into their leftist values." Now we still watched it. I mean, in fairness,
I get it.
but now Roseanne is like a big Trumper,
Yeah.
and it boggles the mind based on what I thought in the 80s.
It boggles my mind too. It's funny because Roseanne is kind of the OG of cancel culture because she was canceled by the right back in 1990 when she went down and sang the national anthem at the baseball game, which I tried to talk her out of. Listen, the national anthem. I was like, she goes, I'm going to do it. People say I'm a good singer. Now, people will lie to you. And by the way, God doesn't bless everybody with everything. Okay, you're a good actor, you're a good comedian, writer, but then the singer thing, it's just not how it works. So said to her, listen, she goes, they want me to sing national anthem in a baseball game. I go, that's a terribly hard song. I think Barbara
It is.
records that song, And I said, not in Dodger Stadium. I go, let's go down to San Diego, where if it goes sideways, no one will ever hear about it. It went terribly sideways, and
So just to be clear, though, I mean, as someone who I remember when that happened,
yeah,
the assumption was she did this on purpose,
right,
that she was desecrating the national anthem, being unpatriotic, and that there's no way she thought she really could sing it. And so the spitting and all of that this was always a setup
yeah,
to, be disrespectful.
right. Well, I believe me, as a performer, she was doing the best she could, and I think, you started getting booed by 40,000 people, and the spitting and grabbing the cup, she'd seen the baseball players do that, so she assumes, oh, hey, that'll be fine. Now, the president at the time, George H.W. Bush, was watching the game with his buddy who owns the team, in front of press people, said, "That's a disgrace to America." That's a big thing for a president to say. So by the time we got back to LA and our play, oh my gosh, bad mayhem, bad mayhem. And Barbara Bush, who I love, to her credit, said they asked her about it. She goes, I think she's a brave lady. Like, I think he knew he'd over done it. And I remember I went on Johnny Carson after that, and I'm going to defend my wife, as I'd done at the airport. Got arrested for fighting the, and I did some material about George Herbert Walker Bush. It was not funny. It was mean. And I remember the next day I saw Maria Shriver, and she said, "I saw you talking about the president on Carson, and that was pretty rough." I go, "Well, he doesn't watch Carson," and she goes, "I bet he does." And then I go, "Well, he doesn't care what I say," and she goes, "I bet he does." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you have a pad of paper?" She pulled out a pad of paper, and I wrote the note to him. "I'm sorry. Of course, everybody has the right to talk about public figures, but I that wasn't funny, and I'm sorry about that part." She took it, and then less than 3 days later, a Secret Service agent came to my house with a handwritten letter, which I still have here, from the President of the United States. Said, "Hey, Tom, don't worry about it. People can make fun of stuff." And Jerry Weintraub says you're a nice guy. I assume Jerry Weintraub was the only other Jew in Hollywood. "Will you join Barbara and I for dinner? We're going to something in Las Vegas this weekend." I was like, "Absolutely." And absolutely. And so I've never said anything bad about any of the Bushes from then on. Even with the war with George W., I go, no, that Bush family, they're quality. Let me tell you something. Maybe change the film. Not never going to say anything about that family. But yeah, you have those things happen. Now, I don't know what happened with her. I could see before her new version of the show came out, I had a show on Vice called The Hunt for the Trump Tapes. Same time. And then I was doing press set. They're like, "Do you know that your ex-wife is a big Trump supporter?" I go, that seems impossible. And she was. And I did a little rabbit hole on her social media. This is before the show started airing. And it was like she'd written letters to every member of Congress saying John McCain was a traitor. I'm like, who? That's out. That's, the Boston bombing was a false flag. Like, that is bananas. And I assume ABC was aware of it because this is not going to hit well. And man, I just saw it going. And her daughter, my old stepdaughter, reached out to me and said, "Can you help?" I said, "Well, What I would do is take her phone away. I would not.
Yes.
And I sent her a device that takes, if you tweet somebody on your phone, it goes to a different server before it goes, and then people can check it out. I go, but she'd say, well, Trump does his own tweets. I'm gonna, and I just knew it was something bad was going to happen. And so the first season, it's the #1 show, and they're getting ready to start the second season. The writers are coming back on Tuesday. This is a Sunday night, and she told the Trump people, I'm going to be all MAGA all the time. And she told the other people, because there's a lot of other people that were not Trump people on the show, don't worry, we're not going to be political this year. So she had
Right.
two masters. She didn't know what to do. And then I believe she sabotaged herself. She sabotaged. She did the racist thing and sabotaged it so she didn't have to come back to the show. And to be honest, the first version of the show, I worked the first 6 years, but it was canceled in the 9th year. John Goodman wasn't even on the show in the 9th year. They had to pretend he was dead or something. So I think it had run its course with her, and that's what she did. And she sabotaged it. People do that, and that's what happened.
Well, before I get you out of here, and we're now, it feels like a million years ago that the Super Bowl happened, but I wanted to ask you, since I know you're a sports guy, what your take was on the big game.
Well, it was a good game. There's no, I'm a New York Giants fan, so when they play, by the way, we play there every 10 years. We do win, but there's a lot of downtime.
Well, Eli beat Brady 2 times, right?
Trust me, I know he did. Like the week my son was born, Eli was in town. I got him taking a picture. I go, "This is your quarterback, son. The rest of your life." When it is your team, you get emotional. If it's the Iowa Hawkeyes playing anything, I can't quite. It's nerve-wracking. The Chicago Cubs, when they won the World Series, I had diarrhea for like a week. Too emotional. This one, I found things to like about both teams, which is what you got to do. A lot of Iowa guys on the San Francisco. There's a lot of, but I did think that the Chiefs would win, and it was so exciting. I love Andy Reid too, the coach.
Oh yeah.
On my sports show 20 years ago.
Especially he was like a coach for like 21 years before he finally won a Super Bowl. So I love that resilience and the the heart that guy has to, and now he's up there in the same conversation with Bill Belichick.
Well, 20 years ago, it's in Jacksonville, the most unusual Super Bowl city ever. I loved it, but I did my best at sports show for there, and they played the Patriots, right? So Belichick and him, and unfortunately they lost. He was the coach of the Eagles, and it was screwy at the end of the game, and the quarterback was very sick. They could have beaten them, and so of course I ran out of the field with Tom Brady. I got out. You're supposed to get on the field early, and I'm like, "How's it feel?" And he starts to get up from being the huddle, and he well, and he sees it's me and kind of pushes my mic out of the way, which is very funny for my show. He apologized later, but yeah, I was in the bowels of the thing, and they were the producer like, you got to talk to Andy Reid. I go, I don't. He just lost the Super Bowl. I am not going to put him through. I'm not going to do that to him. I don't like that. Makes me uncomfortable. And all of a sudden he says, look behind you. At the end of the hall, Andy Reid is coming towards me, and we filmed it. It's on film. And then I started walking the other way with the crew, and I'm like, hey, I met your wife. She's really nice. He goes, thanks, Tom. That was all. Such a quality guy in loss. He lost, and he was a quality person. Which if Bill Belichick lost the Super Bowl and then bitched about it for a year, like Trump, or 5 years, but that's maybe the most un-American thing that Trump does. We lose. You got to be a gracious winner and a good loser. Losing sucks, but it does happen.
These are all values that we learned in like Little League and Boy Scouts and Sunday school that he doesn't follow. He doesn't follow all, everything that like my dad taught me about being a human being, Donald Trump eschews.
Yeah, true. I feel the same. the same. It's weird that people buy into that. His son Donald Jr. has had some issues similar to mine, and back in the night, I myself and my friends took care of him. He'd go to Maui with us. He had some great friends from Colorado, and his dad disowned him. The second he got in trouble with that, He's disowned him. Didn't talk to him. Like, it's a weird thing for a dad to do. And so really kind people looked out for him because they have compassion. And I said to him, "Your dad, he's an a-hole." But I said, "You're a lot of dads are like that. You'll get around this." And now I guess he did get around it. So you never know. You just got to try to do the right thing. If someone calls me and says I'm having an issue with drugs, alcohol, or whatever, mental health, and I go around and give these talks around the country. I was in South Carolina last week. Wherever it is, I don't go, "Hey, how many Republicans are here?" Because the most important thing we have in common, we are humans, and we want to be better. We want to be better. And another thing I have to say, in my story, I say, I've warned a lot of people, do you want to get sober? Do you want to detox in rehab, a nice rehab where they'll help you make cover, or on a slab down at county jail? And I had a couple sheriff's deputies come up to me and say, here's our program that we do at this whatever county Myrtle Beach is in, and we are humane. And I've seen that a lot. I do drug court with judges and cops, and where these people that have nothing, like nothing in common, the humanity I see from these people, and then we help people. If they're willing to stay sober and work and get tested every day, we want to help them. We don't want this on their record, and they got families. And you talk about miracles. Miracles are when people from all faiths and walks of life get together and go, we want to help this guy or that guy. And that is missing from our politics for sure.
Amen. Well, I really appreciate all the work that you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us here.
Thank you. I'm a fan of yours. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and the right center thing is all good for me. It's when the people that are all on anything Trump does, I go, okay, I can't, And I also feel bad for people who can't make fun of Biden, comedians. I don't like it when he rides a bike. I get very nervous. But Roseanne can never make fun of Trump. And that you lose a lot because there's a lot of stuff to make fun of him. If you're really a comedian, you kind of go all around the spectrum. And so when you can't do that as a commentator, it means you're dishonest. And nobody wants that on either side. So, all right. Thank you, Matt. You're the best.
Thank you, Tom Arnold. Thanks for coming on the news.
All right, buddy.